What is going on to all of you guys out there, and welcome back. Thank you for tuning in. If you're watching, if you're listening, whatever medium you choose. And also, obviously, to all of you out there, happy holidays. Hope you enjoy. We're still here preparing all the pieces of content, getting them ready for the holidays to release. So no matter where you are, if you're home, alone, with your spouse, with your family, doesn't matter. If you're on vacation, it doesn't matter. Wherever you are, you can still enjoy our content. Now, this is the second part of our podcast with Oskar. Incredible person, incredible podcast. I had a blast talking to him, getting all these insight, gathering all this data for you guys so you guys can get more educated and also take him as a person that has done it, that has taken their passion and what they love and made it into a career and still working on it and has expanded himself. So in the first part of the podcast, it was all about how he became a DJ, right? DJ Styline, that is what he has built throughout the years, being a resident DJ in Shanghai. But eventually down the line, things piled up and he started producing. He's always had an entrepreneurial spirit right from the start. We already talked about it in the first podcast. And so in this one, we're kind of exploring that even more, how he became an entrepreneur, how he did it, because he isn't a business student, right? So how did he get this knowledge? How did he feel while going through the process? What projects did he work on? What worked out? How did it work out? All that great thing that kind of gives you an insight into not only what he did in like his resume, but how he did it. And most importantly, what advices can he give you? After he has done all this, now where he is being a CEO and the COO, multiple projects going on at once, what type of advice can he give to you? But I don't want to spoil too much. If you don't believe me, see for yourself. And without further ado, let's jump right into the podcast. We talked about you being a DJ now, but also already a little bit about producing a little bit, although we didn't really call it producing yet. But the question I want to ask is, when did you start with music production?
Probably properly when I was in China. I was I was basically running the studio there for like 1.5 years. We had a cool, really great recording studio, and I was also running a record label there for the first time and managing a record label. So I really got exposed to a lot of producers through that, because I would be in touch with all these guys that are sending in tracks. I would listen to all the demos. I would then start myself out on production as well, seeing other people come into the studio, and I would kind of be the studio assistant, setting up the recordings for them. And I don't know, that's how I got into it. And then at some point I just started doing it myself.
Did you start off producing just like tracks for yourself?
Yeah, for sure. There's like no way you're gonna release any of the first shit that you do. Sorry, but it is literally it is not good. Trust me. Anyone that like starts working on a track, I mean, it sounds so simple. In house music, yeah, you can say nowadays it's a recipe, but if you start out making music, especially now, club systems have such a good sound. If your track doesn't meet that standard, it sounds super flat. It doesn't drive you, it doesn't pump. You know, you need to have a certain level of experience, and that's what it comes down to. You need to have a certain level of experience to be able to mix a track properly. And by mixing, I mean, so you have your different layers of sounds. So, and then you just basically come up with your own production technique. So I think what helped me at the beginning first is, which audio workstation are you using? So there's different DAWs, they're called. Probably the most famous one is Ableton right now. I started on Cubase actually. So Cubase is from Steinberg, and like really good sound engine, so stuff sounds really fat. They came up with the VST format. So VSTs is kind of the plug-in integration that all these digital audio stations are using now. So all those plugins are basically, all the more recent plugins are written in VST or VST3, and now they integrate then with all the different stations out there, from Studio One to Ableton to FL Studio, whatever is there. So when I started on Cubase, essentially you start finding all these plugins that you enjoy and that you start to understand. At the beginning, it all looks like a little bit crazy, like any studio. If you see a synthesizer, there's so many knobs and so many like things that you can do.
Yeah.
There's modular environments, and then there's everything. But essentially what I started doing is I started like collecting like my plugins that I use all the time, I can recommend a few for sure. Maybe I'll do it a little bit later. But what I first want to talk about is that once you start having your core of tools that you enjoy and that you understand, then it's less about like, it's same as the audio equipment when you start DJing. And it's less about trying to understand what all the knobs are doing, but more how to like get to what you want to achieve with your music, actually, which is like making that song, right? So, of course, for me, all of my tracks start with the low end. So low end for me, meaning the kick and the bass. So I never started a track just with like a melody or something like this. That's just not like how house music works for me. It always starts with a kick and bass and maybe an idea, maybe a vocal or something that could happen. But then usually you want to come up with a groove first. So, and I do that now even more than before, where we separate the groove, and especially in the Don't Blink project, we separate the groove from the idea. So the groove in house music is essentially like a beat with percussions, with a bass line that sits on top of a kick drum, and it just like drives you or whatever. You have some rhythm elements on top, and that's your groove. And that can essentially just keep running, and then you can filter it out and bring it back or whatever, and that just runs. And now comes the part which makes the track special, which is the idea. And the idea can be essentially either a vocal, it can be some cool samples, it can be a melody, it can be like a crazy sound that keeps developing, anything that nowadays makes a track stand out. And that's where the creativity comes in, and that's where you can kind of like think a little bit out of the box. So what we are doing now a lot in the Don't Blink project recently is we just come up with a lot of different grooves over the course of like 1 or 2 weeks, which are like really cool, different, like one more bass housey, one more like tribal-ish, or whatever you want to do. And then you have some ideas that are maybe floating around, and you just start putting them on top of all these different grooves that you did. And one just clicks. And you're like, this is cool. Like, I have this like vocal chant, and it works really well with these tribal things. And then boom, and they just work together. And then you start arranging. So, and then then you start making an arrangement of how you want the song to be. Maybe you need to add some effects on top, some additional elements or whatever. And then with mixing and particularly mastering, that's all just experience. So mastering, I always mastered everything myself, / Alex was mastering some of stuff for me, because we work together. He's great. He's like on another level. He's been doing this like for way too long. So it's great if you, I don't know, if you have fun with what you're doing, and then it can be really frustrating, and sometimes you don't understand what is wrong. I think what I learned is A/B a lot, like A/B as much as you can, especially when it comes down to mixing, mastering. And what I mean by that is like, there's plugins where you can essentially on the master channel just go from a song that you know sounds really freaking good, throw that in there, and then go back to your song, and then try to understand what is different right now. Listen to the highs, and if your highs go like and absolutely destroy your eardrum, and probably something is wrong. Probably you want to EQ them out a bit, or bring them down, or like replace them, or do something. And then if your kick just absolutely dominates, for example, then you might want to bring that down as well. Or if your bass line is too muffled, then you can cut it out a little bit, give some more room to the kick. And I think there's a lot of great tutorials out there online as well nowadays, a lot of master classes. Everyone talks about production. I think in the end of the day, just by that, you can learn a lot. And then after that, it's just learning by doing. Find your own sound, find your own style. At the beginning, maybe try to replicate some of other people's tracks to come as close to it as you can, to just as an exercise. But then I think develop your own sound. And I think I found my sound with the Powerhouse genre that I kind of created, I guess. I created my own label as well called the Powerhouse. So the idea here was that it's kind of like a house beat, but quite energetic, quite a big bass line, and then some samples that are quite catchy, you know. And that worked out for me because that's kind of what the club that I was playing at liked. And then it's fun because then you play out the music that you make, you're getting really excited about it, and you get inspired by it. You want to go back and work on even more. And that's kind of a really cool cycle. Whenever I DJ not so much, for example, right now, because of the entire like quarantine right now, it's actually it's much more difficult because you basically produce music that you think will be cool in a club. but you never really tried it. You never had a chance to play out the sketches or stuff like this. So that was obviously a cool thing for me to do in Shanghai, where because I'm a resident in that club and play there 3 nights a week, I could also afford playing a half-finished track sometimes and get away with it, and then knowing, oh, I know now this part doesn't really work at all.
Yeah.
And then you quickly mix out of it or something, and then it's fine, and then you understand, okay, like this needs some more work, you know. But yeah, that's kind of how it goes.
Really cool. That's super interesting. I always wondered how, you know, the mindset of a producer would be. Like, what do they start with? What do they think about? You know, what do they incorporate when? And you know what I mean? Because you only see like the finished song, but you never see the process really.
I mean, I think everyone has a different process. I have some friends, they're amazing with synthesizers, like analog synthesizers. They create like sounds left and right, record all of them, and then that's kind of their idea. And then they start putting them and putting percussions on it, and then a beat on it eventually. That's not really how it works for me. I kind of need that kick drum to drive me and kind of feel the groove of the track. Other people are amazing vocalists. They record all their stuff first, and then do the stuff around it. So I think there's no like formula to it. I think in general, whatever feels right to you, go for that. My approach, I don't think it's the best anyway. So it's probably pretty crappy. What I do want to say is that nowadays I'm using Bitwig. Bitwig is a new project from, I think, the guys from Ableton and also the guys from Cubase. It's awesome. It's kind of like the perfect mix between Cubase and Ableton. It's kind of both of them on steroids. It's really lightweight, and I love it a lot. And we've both been producing on it for like 3 years now, and it's great. So
I'll definitely put if there's a link, I'll put it in the description for everybody to check it out. For
Bitwig, sure, yeah, it's a great software, yeah, for sure,
exactly.
yeah.
They're
pretty new. I mean, they're not that new, but they're a pretty new audio station. They're freaking awesome. Yeah.
Oh yeah, the more we can share, the better.
Definitely.
Yeah, I also want to talk about the perception of a producer, right? So when I think of a music producer, I think about the studio, right? They're sitting on the one side of I don't know, in the studio, they have like this huge board with like what you already said, 1 million knobs and 5 discs and I don't know what. So I want to ask you, in reality, what do you need to become a producer, equipment wise?
A laptop and headphones, if you really want to stretch it. I mean, so okay, here's the thing. We built, in the first house we had here in Bali, I built like a full blast studio, soundproofed, panels. We had someone, like an acoustic guy, come in, do the full thing. It was great. The room was awesome. And we lived there for like 3 years. I bought really big speakers, like midfield monitors. Midfield meaning that they're powerful, so you can't like sit right next to them. You need some room between them and you. So because otherwise it doesn't work. So usually if you have a small room, you take like near field monitors because you sit closer to them. I mean, for house music, it's really nice to have speakers, not just headphones. Headphones are sometimes more precise if you want to mix like mid-range, high-end. But if you want to feel the song, you kind of need speakers, because that's when you feel the kick drum, that's when you feel the bass. I think if I don't know any electronic music producer that only produces their stuff on headphones, it feels kind of lame to me. And also then some people are saying you can use these like packs now that you can wear as like a backpack that gives like your bass vibrations into your chest. I tried that once. It was horrible. It's like someone stabbing you in your back like every freaking like second. It's like, oh, what the it doesn't work. I think speakers are a good thing. Problem is, obviously, if you're in an apartment or something and you have neighbors, you got to keep it low. But otherwise, a laptop is all you need. We had studio laptops all this time. I would not even recommend someone to get like a tower PC anymore, because especially you want to be able to do it on the go. Oftentimes we're traveling and having everything in a laptop. These laptops nowadays are so good. We can have 100 channels and that thing still runs without any buffers. I mean, sometimes it does, of course, but it is what it is. Our studio laptop still is a Windows, not because I mean, everything else I do is on Mac, but a lot of plugins originally were done only for Windows. And we still use some of them. Nowadays, I think it's better, but it's still quite it works well on Windows. So I don't know. It's again, personal preference. A lot of people now love Logic. Logic is a great DAW as well. So, and it sounds great too. So that works too. Again, whatever you're used to, you're good with. So, and then what else do you need? I think patience and like just put in some hours. What they say, if you put in 10,000 hours into something, you become a master at it.
Mm-hmm.
It's very true. Not every day you will see so much progress. It comes and goes. Sometimes you're plateauing a little bit or feel like it's getting worse, but then like suddenly you have a eureka effect and like everything comes to you again. That's with any sport. It's with anything you're doing, and I think music production, that's the exact same thing. And sometimes we are stuck, and I'm stuck, and I can't come up with any idea for like a couple weeks. And then sometimes you just bang out 4 or 5 tracks within like 2 weeks or something, and everything just falls into place. So it's really interesting how that stuff works. So I'm not really working on so much production myself anymore at the moment. And that's oftentimes why I refer to as we right now, because literally since like the last 1.5 years now, most of the tracks that I've been producing, we have been producing, because it's all our new project now. It's all Don't Blink. I haven't really worked on any Styline track on like my solo project in the last 1.5 years. And the reason for that is that I kind of like outgrown it in a way. Like I just enjoy this so much more, working together, kind of jamming out. And then also just this tech house sound is just really what I'm into at the moment. And it's going really well. We have a new label, and it's growing. So it's really fun.
That's great. I think what you just mentioned about sometimes you hit those moments in your career where it doesn't seem to move forward anymore. I think for a lot of people, that's like a huge struggling point that that are trying to deal with. I want to ask you if you can elaborate a little bit more specifically on if you have a ritual, you take a 2-hour walk or whatnot that helps you kind of reset your mindset and regains motivation. If you look at idols or whatnot, like have you thought about what exactly helps you?
Yeah, that's a good question. Unfortunately, I don't have a secret formula, but I think if you have this, like, I guess there could be 2 things. One is like a creative block. A creative block that can happen to anyone, and you can be at like the highest level of what you're doing, and that can still happen. Time helps. A little bit of a getaway helps. Like if you just like get out of like this environment that you are in so much, experience something new, and just in general, like don't try and force it too much. Sometimes also having a break then is kind of a good idea. But that is significantly different than this like development, just like kind of plateauing. Because that has nothing to do with like having a creative block or like not like, I don't know, just having a bad day or something. It has mainly to do with like you feeling like you can't do this, or like you feeling like I'm not good enough, or doubting yourself. And exactly in that moment is when you need to sit your ass down even longer and work even harder. Because that's a time when like, even though you know that you're not coming up with good stuff right now, sit down for another 8 hours and really like hone in on it, because then the next day you will do better, and then the next day you will do better again, and then it will keep rising again. And I think that's kind of it's funny because since I'm here in Bali, I learned how to play frisbee, ultimate frisbee, and that's a sport that I never knew existed before. One of my good friends here played it, and now 3 of my good friends here played it, all in uni and high school in the States, and it's a pretty big sport there. And because they were going 2-3 times a week, I was going 2-3 times a week. And now I was playing on the national team here for Indonesia. We're playing in like Thailand, we're playing in Vietnam, we're playing in in Philippines, everywhere right now, and I'm part of the team. And that had nothing to do. Yeah, that had nothing to do. Of course, they're still better than me. I mean, they had all that practice, plus they did it for years before. But at least I'm a valuable part of the team now, and I have so much fun. And yeah, it wasn't like this from the beginning. At the beginning, I felt like I'm just like the fifth wheel on a wagon. It's like they just try to drag me out to have fun with me. But if you like have that kind of mindset and then just like, okay, let's put in like, I mean. And don't think anyone's judging you. I think that's like the worst thing as well. If you like, no, because they would think like I'm not looking good, It's the same thing if you go to the gym for the first time and you have the feeling people are laughing at you because you're not in shape. Well, you were in the gym to get into shape. It's not like you go to the gym to be there in shape. It's not like, that's not how it goes. You play Frisbee because you have fun and then you get better at it, And then if you have fun, as long as you have fun, it all works out anyway. So, yeah, if you have fun with your music production, even though sometimes it's frustrating, I get that. And yeah, there's plenty of tracks that didn't work out for me. There's plenty of ideas that are still laying around. There's vocals that I paid for that I never came up with the right track for. And that's frustrating. But it is what it is. And in the end of the day, I make music for myself. And I make music. And that's the reason why I don't enjoy pleasing labels too much. But that's just my own personal mindset, is if I make a track and that's the track how I want it to be, then I'm happy with it. And then if the label doesn't like it, that's fine. And I'm going to put it out on my own label, because there I have to create the freedom of putting it out, what I enjoy doing. Because I think that's the artist in me in a little bit of a way, because, I don't know if I don't know. Have you seen, what was that movie? Bohemian Rhapsody.
The movie about Queen.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it, but
it's great. But when he's coming to the label and the label is telling them, no, you can't make a song that's like 8 minutes long. It's not going to work in radio. And then they're like, no, we're going to do it. Take it or leave it. And then they take it and it's becoming the biggest hit of like all time. So,
I do know the story.
Yeah. I mean, in the end of the day, that's kind of what it is. Of course, labels... I'm not saying that labels are a bad thing. I work with plenty of labels that are great. But I'm just saying, like, it happens more and more often and frequently that people ask you to change something. I also say, listen to this feedback. It's oftentimes constructive feedback. If they tell you, like, this just doesn't work so well, then don't just be like, no, that's my art, and then don't listen. That's wrong. But if that's the direction that you want to go and you're confident in yourself and your own skill, go for it, because that's how you develop your own sound, not by like copying what other people are telling you to do, right? So,
yeah. I think, probably, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this mindset, this artistry mindset, and you love producing for your, not for yourself, but you like doing your own stuff. I think. Do you think that's also the mindset that kind of propelled you to also do all these entrepreneur, CEO, as these self-made type of things in your life? Do you think that's your big mindset?
Yeah, I think I'm really opinionated. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's sometimes I can be a little bit stubborn as well, which is a bad thing as well, I guess. But I learn how to like understand other opinions and then and then give in and be like, yeah, you guys are right, But in the end of the day, I was usually, it's a funny thing, because back to when I was in this like program in high school and at the same time in uni, one of our teachers was saying that every person in this group of 15 students is fulfilling a role. And obviously there was some like girls that would always like take notes for everything, so we would have them afterwards and stuff. But I feel like my role was always to kind of question the group and to kind of rethink or introduce an alternative. And then even though if it's not the right thing, at least like have them like rethink their concept one more time before like we finally go with it. And I think that kind of definitely helped me in just thinking out of the box in a way. I think that's really what it comes down to. So if you are able to see to not just walk with what everyone tells you to, but kind of like just I don't know, see it from a different perspective. Sometimes that can be really helpful. I don't know. That's how I approach things. So, for example, and maybe that's like the example now with my first company that I ran with the YouTube thing. When my first channel got taken down, one of my friends quit. But me in particular, and then the other friend just kept going. But me in particular, I saw it as an inspiration, and I said, okay, people clearly want this. I'm going to do it again. And I did it from 100,000 to 1 million. And then I sold that. And I used that money to basically build the next thing, which was my own YouTube network. So at that point, then I understood that, wait a second, I can make money off YouTube now. So how to take this to the next level? So the next level then for me was like, okay, let's start licensing all this content and start making our own network. So, and yeah, that's again kind of thinking out of the box, because essentially what is happening is you poke up and you're the whack-a-mole and someone just knocks you down, and then you poke up somewhere else, and then, well, I guess at that point no one completely hit me down, but someone gave me some money for eventually. But then at that point, I could have also said, okay, that's it now with YouTube. I'm done. I made my money and I'm happy. But no, I think the idea here was really to say there are channels out there that want to put out music, obviously, on YouTube, and they can't because YouTube / the labels are striking down that content. So what can we do about it? So at that time, I had grown one of the biggest music channels on YouTube, and I had a partner manager. Once you reach a certain amount of subscribers, you get a personal partner manager at YouTube. So I had a good partner manager, and I also lived in China at that time. So I actually had a partner manager in Hong Kong / in Tokyo. So their office was in Tokyo, but she was oftentimes in Hong Kong. So I talked with her about the idea of me going out there and starting to contact labels, getting like non-exclusive licensing agreements in place with those labels, like I did for my second channel, and then licensing that content in order for it to be for other channels to be using it and promoting that music. And that's exactly what we did. So YouTube believed in it because it was really tough for them as well for music. So they were happy if someone else does it. And that's exactly what MCNs, like multi-channel networks on YouTube, were about, that you provide. There was a few big ones that were doing this with gaming, because at that time, video games didn't quite understand that YouTube can be amazing promo for you. So there was the first kind of Let's Plays that came out. But the problem with those were that, let's say you are EA and you make the brand new, I don't know, Call of Duty. And now one of these big YouTubers is playing the single player mode and doing the full story on YouTube. And obviously, like, if you think about it for the first time, it's like, no, this is bad for business, because now like 100,000 people are watching this guy play the game, and we sell the game one time instead of 100,000 times. But that logic is completely flawed, because essentially this guy is giving you free advertising to 100,000 brand new people that then also will be interested in experiencing the game by themselves, and then maybe not just the single player mode, but also the multiplayer mode, and joining and buying, and suddenly you grow this. And the first game that really did that and embraced that was Minecraft. And Minecraft sold for $1 billion or even more euros, and it was the most basic Java game ever created, and it's the most amazing success story I ever heard. And to be fair, with YouTube and music, it was very similar. Only that there was no. So no, what I wanted to say was that essentially then what happened was there was gaming networks on YouTube, like Machinima and a few others. They would go out there, talk with the publishers of the video games, make licensing agreements with them, so that the channels within that network are able to use that video game content on their channels. And that worked really well, because then YouTube didn't have to set up these licenses for themselves. And these multi-channel networks had like kind of something to provide to the artists. And they would traditionally take a cut, like a commission for providing that. So we did the exact same thing. So I essentially started that company, and we grew it to around 300 channels. So we had 300 music channels in our network. We made around, at the peak time, we made around 300 million views per month. That was great.
Wow.
And well, all of them, so not all of them monetized, of course, but like we did monetize quite a lot of it. And then we paid out the labels. We had licensing agreements in place with, I think at some point it was over 4,000 labels. And then, so you set up an agreement with them, you can use their content. You tell the label, you can tell the channels that they can use that content, and then they can pick and just throw it out there. And it was great because no one else did it. And then I did that for, a good 3 years or something. And then YouTube really changed to the worst. There was a lot of controversy on YouTube going on. There was a big problem with an American YouTuber called Logan Paul. He shot a video in he put some advertising on a video that he should not have posted of whatever. Let's not go into too much detail. I think people know that story. But what happened was what they call the adpocalypse. The adpocalypse was essentially a lot of advertising companies pulling out of YouTube, not wanting to advertise on YouTube anymore because the content, YouTube was kind of like not so well regulated at that time. So what was happening is that, let's say, a Coca-Cola ad could run in front of like a terrorist video or something like this, or like some I don't know, some racist content or something like this, and you would suddenly kind of endorse some brands with this kind of content, which is terrible. So a lot of advertisers pulled out until YouTube got their system back in order. And the problem was, I wasn't so concerned about our ad revenue going down, because that just means, okay, everyone makes a little bit less. It's still fine, But the problem is that if our ad revenue goes down, also the revenue from all the labels, and in particular the major labels, goes down. And major labels are extremely greedy. And the two agreements we had in place with two of the major labels, they suddenly started to be worth nothing, because essentially what they were doing is they just tried anything to pull strings to keep up their revenue. And then suddenly a promo network like ours they're like, oh, that's a monetization gap and stuff like this. So they try everything to squeeze out every cent. And that was at that time when I was like, okay, I think it's time to sell. So I looked for potential buyers and found another big network that was out there, sold it to them, and essentially sold the assets mainly. Like we had a dashboard built, like it was like a developer build for we even had a small app for all of our channels to like check their revenue and check a few other things about their channel. They got that, and then obviously the licensing agreements. That was like the biggest thing, because I spent a majority of my time during that time to set up licensing agreements with labels, with distributors, with different kind of parties to make sure that we can use that content. So that was the right time to go out though, because music since then on YouTube has been even more difficult, in particular mixes. What is interesting is that now there's other platforms that are starting to monetize mixes. One big one that is coming up, I think, very soon, I don't know how much we can talk about it, but is Apple Music.
Really?
Apple Music right now is looking into, because Apple in general with iTunes have been for the longest time almost a digital leader when it comes down to music distribution. And with Apple Music, they took over streaming, but they also have all the licensing agreements in place with all those labels, with literally everyone. So what they are working on right now, I think, is allowing you to basically host a mix, and then you just provide the track list of which songs are inside. And then once you know which songs are inside, you can essentially just monetize based on which parts of the mix you were listening to. So if you were listening to the first 15 minutes and there was these 5 tracks played, then depending on which songs you listen to, those people are being paid for those streams. So that's awesome. And I'm really excited for that. So
my God, that's great.
Yeah.
Crazy to hear that it comes from Apple. Yeah. Super nice.
Well, it's not out yet. I think they're starting to work on it.
But the idea is great. And also I love the story about you, that you you didn't come from a business background, yet the the passion in you to just create stuff just drove you to still do all these things and learn by them, and not it's not a story of failure. It's at the end of the day a story of success.
I don't even know what drove me to do all this, to be honest. And I think now I'm still surprised how my 19 or 20-year-old self was able to, for example, I incorporated my company in Hong Kong. I went to Hong Kong as like a 20-year-old. I was there at like literally having a meeting with this like girl at HSBC, who's like the biggest bank in the world. And she's like, oh, you want to open a business bank account here, yeah? I was like, yeah, I want, I will. And she's like, so she's like, so who's your client? And I was like, Google is my client, because Google in the end is the ones that are paying for all the YouTube ad revenue. And then they were like, oh, okay, sure. And
sounds good.
But then suddenly you not just like need to incorporate a company, you need to have like an assistant. So I had an assistant then at that point because there was so much. Then suddenly you start growing a team around you, right? Then what's happening is you start paying taxes in Hong Kong, and like there's so many moving parts now that suddenly start taking up your life. It's so I don't know. It's kind of funny how you're being like moved into these different things, or I moved myself into all these different perspectives, and then at some point something comes too close, like that exit of my first company, and was the right timing, and I'm happy about it. Possibly could have gotten a little bit more out of it if I would have waited a bit longer. Maybe not as much. Who knows? You never know, right? But in the end of the day, I'm happy, and I moved on, and now I run 2 other companies at the moment. So
yeah,
it's always moving to the next thing.
It's so inspirational that a lot of people they think because they don't have the necessary expertise or skills that they think they have to pursue whatever they want to pursue yet. They I don't know, I think it's like a procrastination thing, and then you just get idle and you don't do anything, and it's terrible. And I think having people like you, for the people who are listening and watching, hearing that there are examples out there that show them like, hey, you can just go for it, and you learn on the way and you do it, and everybody keeps telling you, but only when you actually see it. For example, when I talk to a guy like you now, then it kind of manifests and you realize like, hey man, like I can also do this. You know what I mean?
You can do it, and then if you feel and just surround yourself with other people that have a similar mindset.
Exactly.
I think that's like the main thing. If you're around people that just like always questioning everything you're doing, and you almost like have to like put in half of your energy to just like kind of like almost like defend what you were working on, that is not like a productive environment right there. So instead, you should have someone that encourages whatever you're doing, even though it's like not sounding so great quite yet or whatever, If you have a girlfriend and you produce music and she's always telling you, no, stop this, it sucks, you will never become better, because then you'll be discouraged of doing anything in that direction, But if she's excited about it, and if she like supports you, and if you have your first gig and she's there with you and stuff like this, then that's someone good to be around with. I think that's and it's not just about the girlfriend. Obviously, especially if you build a team, and I'm really grateful about the team that we have here now. All these people, we're challenging each other every day, mentally, physically, and everything. So it's a great environment to be in, because you're constantly trying to improve and kind of like improve yourself as well to the others. So that's an interesting environment, because that never wants you to slow down or be too lazy. You almost have to, in our like environment here, you almost have to have an excuse if you want to be lazy. It's kind of a weird thing. It's like, I don't feel so good today. It's like, yeah. It's like, but yeah, otherwise
it pushes you. It's great.
It pushes you, definitely, and that's a good thing. It's like it doesn't allow us to slow down, and especially now during this time, during the quarantine, we sat down, and it was like in March or end of March, beginning of April, when reality really sank in, where it was like, damn, this is going to happen, and it's going to be really freaking depressing now for like the next few months, and no one knows how it's going to happen. And we literally had one meeting together, and we were like, okay, guys, so this is how we can handle this. Either we can watch the news every day and like cry and, and get really like influenced by what is happening out there, or we can just like accept that that's the reality right now. Everyone's impacted by this. So everyone will be like probably in a similar situation, and we want to come out of it on top. So we want to like sit down and be as productive as we can be during this period. So we literally, for like the first 3 or 4 months of quarantine, we were just like locking ourselves in and just like cranking through. And that was the launch of our new app, actually. And we were so excited, and it like banged immediately. We were so happy because then suddenly we also used it to our advantage that suddenly everyone's online. Because if you release a new app and suddenly every artist is online and they're not touring, it's the best thing that could happen, because then suddenly you reach everyone. So it worked out really well. So, but again, yeah, you need to. I cannot explain a mindset or just. I mean, I also have lazy days, of course. It's not like a secret thing or whatever. I just think personally, I have a few traits which I think make me a pretty good leader in a way, which is I usually find the right people to work with. I choose them and I have a right feeling with them. And I'm not being like a boss or whatever that just tells people what to do, but I'm like showing oftentimes where it's going to go and work side by side. And that's kind of how we grew our company as friends and as equals, right? And we're all involved and all excited about it. And then lastly, I think is I'm pretty emotionally stable. I'm not saying I'm a psychopath, but I'm not so emotionally impacted by a lot of things. So oftentimes I see a lot of, that's one thing that I learned of becoming a boss or like becoming the CEO of a company with a bigger team. It's very time consuming managing people, because if you're just by yourself, you go pretty quick alone. But once you add more people, you feel like, oh, the efficiency should double if I like add one more person. And then if I add a third person, like whatever, but that's not how it goes. You actually like with more people, everything becomes a bit slower, but you go further together. So that's actually a nice saying. And I think I heard Robert Downey Jr., I think, say that on a Joe Rogan podcast. It's faster alone, but further together. And that's absolutely true. And that's what I see now every day. And that's where we're going as well now. So if you have a project that you work on with other people, even though sometimes you get frustrated with the others or whatever and stuff, that can happen. But always remember, like, it's not working without them, and you will always go further because of them. So, that's kind of, and I love that mindset. And I think that's exactly what we're doing at the moment. So
that's great. I love that. I love that saying. I love that. Let's talk. Yeah. Let's dive more into the various companies that you had founded and worked with over the years. So what was the first one? I saw on your LinkedIn something about the Arcane Group.
Yeah, the Arcane Group, Arcane Network. That was my YouTube network.
That was the licensing network that you had built.
Yeah, correct. So I founded that in 2015, I think. Was that 2015? Something around that, maybe end of 2014. It was around for like 3 years until 2018, roundabout. Built it up pretty quick because I had the right connections. I already had half of the licensing agreements in place, just expanded it. I already had a lot of connections to all these YouTube channels, so they were all super happy to join. We built it in there. I started working with a developer company that was out in Shanghai to build like a little app and a little dashboard for it. Grew that up and sold it in 2018, I think. So that was a pretty quick in and out of the company. Right. So it was pretty successful. I was really happy about it. The thing that one thing that is worth noting here is that with that company, it happened all so fast, but I had the feeling it was never mine though. And that is the problem, that if you build something based on other people's stuff. So for example, a YouTube network is obviously depending on YouTube. Only as long as they give you permission, the license and the network provided, only like during that time you can actually operate. If something now changes with YouTube, for example, with this apocalypse, you are highly impacted by this, even though it didn't, your business didn't cost this. And this made me a little bit worried. It helps massively to accelerate quickly. So we were able, because YouTube provides the viewers, YouTube provides the ad partners, YouTube provides all this infrastructure that wouldn't be there. So suddenly you have everything you need. It's like the full package. So that was great. But also it comes with the problems, right? It comes with like any like regulations that are coming and stuff like this. The other thing is licensing deals are also just temporary. So you negotiate them for 1 year, 2 years, sometimes 3 years if you're lucky, but that's it. And if someone doesn't want to renew, you have a problem, right? And then you need to find alternatives, or you need to convince them or give them a bigger deal, and people become greedy. They want more and more. So it's like, it felt like it was fast to build it up, but I was also happy to kind of like get out of it, because now the things that we are building now, both the new companies, they are all completely built by ourselves. So we are in full control of the entire ecosystem. So it takes longer. It's more stretched out, but no one can take it away from us. That's kind of the idea here, and that's really the cool part of it. It's not as quick, but it will go further. So that's cool. So
that's and what exactly what two companies are you working with right now?
Yeah, so one of them is called 1001 Tracklists. 1001 Tracklist is a music database, and you could almost say it's like a Wikipedia of dance music. So it's a community-driven website, meaning that there's users contributing to this website, to this database. And we currently have around 700,000 users each month that visit, and not everyone contributes to the site, but we have a few core users, and it's very, very established in the electronic music industry. So we've been building this for now so the website was founded like 9 or 10 years ago almost now by a German database developer. Mm-hmm. And it was essentially, he was frustrated that there was no good place on the internet where he could find the set list of what DJs were playing. So let's say you would hear a set by his favorite DJ. He was a DJ a little bit as a hobby himself. He would hear a set, and the only place that he could maybe find what songs were played was some forum. But forums back in that time, someone would start posting some songs, and then you would have to scroll down and find if someone else, maybe on like page 3 or 4, posted like that song that you were looking for. So he's like, wait a second, I'm a database developer. I can like streamline this process. So if you have a recommendation for a certain song in a set, I could just replace it. So you can just suggest it, and then we can throw it in there. So that's why it's a user-contributed kind of database, where essentially you can throw in and be like, oh, hey, I know this song. This is this and this track. And then it comes in there, right? Well, since then, track lists have changed significantly. So oftentimes the track lists are now being submitted in full right away, because you have Shazam, you have users that know the tracks. Oftentimes DJs upload their own track list, so it's accurate. But the concept is still the same. So what we are doing is essentially collecting all the track lists and set lists of public performances by DJs on radio stations, at festivals, in club sets, on radio shows, whatever it is. So essentially, let's say David Guetta performs at Tomorrowland. You can go onto our website, and while Tomorrowland is going on, our users will be live track listing what he's playing. So even though you don't need to pull out your Shazam or whatever, and even though he's playing some custom edit, maybe with some a cappella on top, we will have that all listed. And then you can kind of see all the songs that were played, right? And this is really cool, because you can then, like, for example, save a song to your Spotify collection, just like save it to the collection. But the cool thing about it is what we integrated kind of like a pre-save now. So let's say a song was played and you don't even know who's it produced by, right? Let's say a DJ plays a track that was promo to him for the very first time. There's no release date. No one knows who that track is by. You can already save it to our website, to your Spotify tracks. So then the moment that track is maybe released a year later and it's getting revealed who the artist is, and then it's finally coming out, it's getting saved to your collection. Because you liked it a year earlier, which is kind of cool, because we store it in our database, of course. So it's really interesting, and we've been kind of building this community now over the last 4 or 5 years very significantly. So the site is run on advertising, both programmatic advertising, but also directly sold advertising. We work with a lot of labels that have like long-term partnerships and deals with us for like promoting their tracks and promoting their label on the site. The data on the site has become more and more valuable because the bigger the data set, and at this point we're literally getting every single set almost out there that is live streamed or that it was performed publicly in the database. With this data set, it's really interesting to labels and, for example, see which promo campaigns are running well right now. What sound is currently being like played a lot. We have our own charts. So for example, we have like our top overall charts. It's the most played tracks by DJs. We have top newcomer tracks. That's like kind of stuff that just came out and that's being picked up. We have like charts, what is trending, what was most heard by our users. So there's a lot of like music discovery going on there. A lot of DJs are using it to see what other DJs are playing, to discover new tracks, to get new trends. And and basically 3 years ago, we started as well to do our own ranking of the top 101 producers. So there's a ranking out there, which is the DJ Mag Top 100 DJs. They've been doing that for, I think, over 20 years. And it's a voting contest. So you vote for your favorite DJ. It's essentially a popularity contest. But it feels like it's a little bit rigged, obviously, towards the commercial DJs because they just have a higher budget to spend on advertising and stuff. And it's a little bit annoying. So what we did instead is we wanted to actually portray an accurate picture of what the industry looked like that last year. So, and we did that by purely making a ranking that's purely data-driven. So the idea here is that we look at all the DJ support songs have been getting over the course of the last year, and then seeing who accumulated the most DJ support during that time period. And those are traditionally the producers that have put out the biggest hits or the biggest tracks or the most tracks in that time frame. So if you are like, even if you're like a really big guy, let's say Hardwell really hasn't been putting out so much music lately, and he hasn't really been touring, and he wouldn't be like super high in our rankings, but he would still be high in like a DJ Mag ranking because people still vote for him because he's so popular. But in our ranking, because he hasn't put out a lot of music for like last year, he wouldn't even be inside the ranking because he didn't put out any tracks. But then some brand new artists which are really popping up and are really trendy and have a really cool sound that right now everyone is playing, they are really high up in the ranking. So it's much more reflective of the industry. So we started doing that. We started doing a state of dance music report where we look at all the data on our website. What are the most genres being played? What are the biggest festivals getting the most views? What are the biggest artists, the biggest tracks, the biggest everything labels? We do that report once a year and kind of put that out there for people to look at. It's kind of more of a data science project a little bit. And then at the moment, we're looking at like a new redesign for the site and integrating a few cool new features. But that site has been running now for a while. We're going to continue doing it. It's a great community, and I would think almost every DJ knows what 1001 Tracklist is at this point. And we, especially Jacob from the team, he's kind of the communicative end of 1001. I think he has personal connections to almost everyone in this industry. So if someone would steal his phone, I think he would have personal connections to all the big artists. It's pretty crazy. It's really nuts. So it's amazing. So this year again, we're going to host our own event. Last year we did an event for the top 101 producers doing ADE. And that was great. We had David Guetta come on stage, actually accepting his award and all these kind of things. It was great, holding a speech. This year we're going to do it differently because it's all virtual. We're actually going to host a virtual event in Minecraft, coming back to Minecraft.
In Minecraft? Oh my God, really?
So people can join in, and it's going to be a festival stage. The artists are going to join doing their recordings. It's organized with a different company as well, and then we're going to live stream everything on Twitch as well, and on a few other like VK and stuff like this. So it's a pretty interesting concept. So let's see how it goes. But
oh my God, this would be so interesting to see, man. That's cool. That's wow. I love how it's just something. It's just taking the industry standard or what's always been there and like making it better. You know what I mean? Or giving a different perspective on it. Like the thing that you said earlier, that you thinking outside the box. Being
Right.
the devil's advocate. That's what they call it in business. Like always like questioning
Twisting it
everything.
a little bit. I mean, then again, this didn't happen from my side with 1001 Tracklist. I think Jan was the original developer who came up with the idea of making it into a database. I essentially started using 1001 Tracklist for my business doing Arcane because it was extremely helpful to me that these kids would start track listing our mixes, because then we can see exactly which labels are on there and stuff like this and what we need to license. So I was using the service and I was using the website during the time when I was running Arcane, and that's how I got in touch with Jan. And then I got involved because I felt like I wanted to almost to like invest in it or something, because I felt like it was such a cool idea and stuff. But then instead of investing, I just joined the team essentially exactly at the same time as Jacob and Evan did. So we were like the core team of 4 people then that really built out 1001 Tracklist and what it was. And I think the interesting part here is that it was not just a technology platform, but it was also a community. And that's mainly what makes that platform special, because there are other websites out there now that are like copying our data or that are just posting track lists, but they are just like, they sometimes do better in like SEO because they're like a really lightweight platform where they just list out like the songs that were played. But that's not even what it's about anymore. It's really about the community, like getting there. And then like we have a story section now where we like do interviews. We curate our own like exclusive mix series where we like showcase new talent and new artists and do all these cool things. So it's really like doing that extra step and building a community. I think is going a long way for any product.
Yeah.
So
yeah, for sure. That is great. And then, so now you're the CEO of 1001 Tracks.
I'm the COO of 1001 Tracklist. So
yeah. Did I say CEO? I meant COO.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, the COO. I mean, we're basically. I don't even know what these titles mean. To be fair, we're just like a couple of guys working on this. I mean, I don't even think that at the moment I'm having such a high impact on that company. You know, definitely the highest impact at the moment is Jacob pulling together all the strings, Evan basically being responsible for managing the entire community, and then Jan also developing everything. So it is a perfect project for like the size of company. We also had a new team member joining 2 years ago called Fahim. He's a social media wizard. He was 17 or something at that time, and man, or maybe he was 18. He blew up our Instagram. We now have like 200,000 followers on Instagram, and but all organic. It's crazy how that grew. I think we just put out great content. Again, we have a great community, and it keeps growing. So that's awesome.
That is so great. Yeah. I would really love to go in super deep into every single company, but it can't be like a 6-hour podcast. So the other company that is more recent now, that is was during quarantine, right? You said the Songstats.
Yeah, Songstats. Well, Songstats was built over the last 4 years, and really? It's a really big project. So Songstats was first. The first idea of Songstats was to create 1001 track lists for artists. So you know how like a lot of music platforms out there have like a for artists app. So for example, Spotify has a Spotify for Artists app that allows artists to kind of take ownership over their Spotify profile, update the information on there, and then pitch new songs to editors, etc. So what we wanted to do is essentially create something similar for 1001 Tracklist, where then suddenly artists and labels can log in, take ownership a little bit over their profile on 1001 Tracklist, but also see all of their data come in. So we wanted them to be able to immediately get like notified when a new DJ supports them and they get played on, like, say, BBC Radio 1 or something like this. We want to give them a notification right away because it's important, right? So we did that. That was like 4 years ago. But then we felt like, wait a second. If you don't right now have a release out, or you're just not such a big artist, you don't really get like a lot of like data here with just 1001 track list. So we felt like, why don't we also integrate other data sources? So that's kind of what we ended up doing. So we started with the ones that we had from 1001, because we had the media links already in 1001 to, for example, Beatport, and also to Spotify, and also to SoundCloud. So I think these were the next like 3 sources that we integrated. So we started collecting that data as well. And it really turns out that Spotify was really this data source that has the most extensive API endpoint to call, where we like you can collect the most data on a song, the most metadata, and they have a really clean metadata in terms of, for example, if there's artists with the same name, they are really good at assigning the right songs to the right artists, which is not always easy. They've spent a lot of time, I think, figuring that out. So that's how 1001 track stats, that's what that platform was called before. We had 1001 track lists, and then we created 1001 track stats. And it was mostly like the idea that we wanted to create like a 1001 track list for artists, or like a stats platform, was born. And we kind of kept that and kept building that over time and learned from mistakes and stuff. But the overarching problem the entire time was that we based the entire database that we built on this on the 1001 tracklist track database. And 1001 tracklist, the 1001 tracklist database is amazing because it's manually maintained. There's no duplicates. It's always been like the centerpiece of 1001 tracklist, because it allowed us to be completely accurate all the time. But the problem with it was that it's only electronic music. And electronic music, when it comes down to music data, is just like a tiny percent of like the entire industry. Yeah. So we had to now figure out a way of how can we expand outside of electronic music while keeping the same accuracy, while not having duplicates, by sorting out metadata. Before, this has all been done manually. Now we need to do it automatically, right? So we spent, I would say, a good 5 months developing something called the tunnel. And it was mainly the brain exercise of me and our head of engineering, Jack, who's an absolute genius. So us both together coming up with like the general idea, and then him being the one executing and developing it over the course of like 3 or 4 months, which was amazing. But essentially what it is, it's a big, big algorithm that we started first drawing out on like a whiteboard, but then we started drawing it out. It became too big for the whiteboard, so we had to like graph it out and everything. But essentially what it is like a big sorting algorithm for tracks and metadata that makes sure that every track, it doesn't matter from which data source coming in, is matching with the correct tracks in our database, even if there are metadata issues, to basically we are creating our own concept of a song within our database that then links to all the different source tracks. Meaning, for example, the track that came out on Spotify might be the radio edit of the track that came out on Beatport, which is the extended edit. That means the ISRC codes, which usually are, ISR codes, ISRCs, otherwise double codes, I guess, they wouldn't match because one is the extended version, one is the radio mix. But we matched them anyway, so because the song is essentially the same. And that's what the tunnel is doing. If a track got re-released on a compilation, sub-licensed in a different territory, maybe there's a clean version, explicit version, it doesn't matter. We find them all and bundle them essentially in our concept of what is a universal track or a universal song. Yeah. So then from there, now that we had that out of the way, and we basically done that like end of last year, and we had all the data sources, that's basically when we finished completing the entire back end, like the full back end of what song sets then was supposed to be. And then came the decision that we wanted to rebrand away from 1001 track sets, open ourselves to all music, to become like a global data analytics app essentially. And that's what we did, and that's how Songsets was born. So we did rebranded it. We did intro video, new branding, new everything, and launched it in April. And since then, it's been blowing up like crazy. It's been a really crazy time here because it's a subscription business. So essentially, what we're doing is an artist there's a freemium part of it, so you can download the app or you can view the data online for free for like the top level information, how many playlists you're in, and all these kind of things. But then any information that is deeper, that is tailored towards you as an artist get a subscription. For an artist, it's 10 euros per month, which is hopefully right in line with what you usually pay for like your Spotify subscription or your Dropbox or whatever you need. And it's a really, we hope it's a good price for artists to pay because it helps them grow their career. So essentially, what we do now at this point in time, we now have integrated 11 different data sources. So anything that's happening to new music across any of those platforms, and that's like Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer, TikTok now, Shazam, iTunes, SoundCloud, Beatport, TrackSource. There's 1,000 trackers. We're doing YouTube. YouTube is coming out actually this week, and Amazon Music is following as well. So anything that's happening on these platforms, let's say you're in a big playlist, you enter the charts, you're being supported, someone is creating a video with your song inside. Anything that's happening to you, you see on the app. You get push notifications. You can share it to your socials. You can share it to your Instagram. So you don't need to like design your own assets and stuff like this. It's all there, right? So we are essentially providing actionable insights across all these different platforms. So it's exciting. We're excited, and it's being really well received by the entire industry right now. And it's interesting to see that now we're expanding outside of this realm, which we were so familiar with, which is electronic music, and expand outside in this entire world of global music. And I've been on so many calls these last few months with managers and labels and distributors that all have different perspectives, that all have different needs and interests. And so we're going to have K-pop, gospel, hip-hop, country, whatever, you name it. Everything is there right now. And all those artists are signing up, and not just artists, but labels and also like companies. And we're essentially trying to prioritize right now what is the most important for all of these users and what's the most impactful. And it's very rewarding, but it's also a lot of work. And
I can imagine. Oh my God.
So, right now, I have a hard time I need to split out my time pretty efficiently between everything that I'm doing. I'm happy to have Alex, that we work together on the music projects right now. So even though if I'm not in the studio one day, he's still working on music, and then he has some cool sketch to show me when I come in the studio, and then we can jam out, you know. I'm happy that, for example, for the labels that I've been doing, I now have someone to help me with who's managing them. So I can still choose the music we want to put out and work on it, but it's not just me doing everything anymore. And I think, again, that's how you keep growing further, because otherwise you're kind of bottlenecking at the capacity that you can fill. So you need to hire more people. And we're happy that now we're profitable already with Songstats, which is great. And we can now invest into hiring more people and growing even further. So that's exciting for us. And that's really cool.
Such an amazing path your life has been. It's crazy to get.
It's crazy. Yeah, I don't know how that happened, to be honest.
It's super interesting to get an insight on. I have to ask you, or you wanted to say something?
Well, I wanted to say that I never talk about this with anyone.
Really?
I don't know. I don't know when I last time did a recap of this. That's why it's also so interesting to me. And I don't want to sound like, I don't know. I don't want to sound like I'm bragging or anything like this, or it's just like, it's really interesting to me to look back as well, and kind of, sometimes I don't comprehend how all these things happen myself, because you just do what you're doing and it just happens to be something cool and it just works out. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. There's plenty of ideas that didn't work out as well that I didn't talk about now. But yeah, you throw yourself in there. I invested a lot in like a platform which I thought would be really cool, which was like a follow to download kind of like platform where you can host free downloads and stuff like this. Spend a lot of money and time in it, and it never. It's just like at some point I just decided, no, let's close it. And then you need to have the balls as well to say, no, it just didn't work out, and take the loss, you know, and move on. Because otherwise, if you get too caught up in your own mind that like, no, I can make this work, and it's all directions, like all pointers point towards no, it's not going to work. Then just be real with yourself and like accept it. And even if it's a hard pill to swallow, got to move on and got to keep on moving. And I think that's one thing as well. You got to get out of your comfort zone with anything you're doing. If you're comfortable at your position, sure, but then also accept that your life is not going to go through so many more changes. So if you go out there and go travel and just say, fuck it, sorry. No. Yeah, whatever. All right. Never mind.
No problem. No problem. Yeah, you're not the first one who this has happened to.
No. Sorry, kids.
No, but yeah, definitely true. I couldn't have said it better myself. The thing that I wanted to ask you is, now that you've come all this way and you have so many projects and so many, like, not projects but like huge and then like big projects, and you already talked about how you would have to efficiently spend your time. How do you plan out your day? Do you plan out your day? Do you have set planners and you go very logically and systematic through it? How do you manage that?
Yeah, it's very planned out. The thing is, I work pretty good at nights by myself. So I for me, it's like everything with team is in the mornings, but we start here at 10 a.m., so not even that early. And the reason for that is that everyone is on a different schedule. Jack, our head developer, he's up really early in the mornings, but he loves his own mornings for writing. So he's writing a novel actually, and he's usually at a cafe. Or right now, he actually starts to do more poetry slam, and like does like
Really?
some he writes some stories for that. It's really cool. It's really awesome. And so he takes his mornings for himself. I take my mornings to sleep. So I enjoy, and then basically I get up maybe around like 8:30, 9ish or something. Maybe work out a bit or do some, I don't know, just get myself in a nice mindset. And then 10 a.m. is usually when we start working in a team until lunch. We go to lunch together or order something in. It depends a little bit. Like it also depended, like now during the Corona time, like we ordered way more because the restaurants weren't open, and or sometimes cook something. Sometimes someone would do pancakes or whatever it is, you know. But then, afternoon again all together until usually like 6 p.m. usually. But sometimes we have like things in like the afternoon. So sometimes we go play frisbee around like 4:30, or go play spike ball at the beach or something. But these are really fun activities. And then I take some time off, have dinner, and usually I dive back in around like 8 or 9. No, usually around 9 p.m. I would think. And then that's usually my alone time. So that's when I'm like by myself, and I either do work on music, and it's Alex and me in the studio, or I'm just by myself. If I need to bang out a task that I just need a lot of focus on, I just do it here by myself. Taxes is one of these things that I don't like doing, or whatever. But then oftentimes it's also just creative work, like researching something, or I don't know, like whatever I feel like doing. I'm really good at doing it at nights because I kind of forget time and no one is distracting. Whereas when you are in a team, I'm pretty good at switching my attention while I'm in a team environment. So even though I'm like focused on writing an email right now, someone can tap me on the shoulder and be like, yo, this and this. And then I can like switch over topic, come back and do that. But then I don't quite enjoy having to switch so much when I'm like really into like a focus time, either a creative like focus or just something where I just want to I don't know, like there's oftentimes tasks where you just need to get into the zone, put on some music, get into a zone, put on headphones, and just do it. And yeah, I'm good at nights like this. And that also means that sometimes I'm like up pretty late, like until like 2 or 3 a.m. or whatever, and then go to bed. And then, yeah, I don't know. And also I have a lot of calls at the moment at nights, because the nights here are usually the afternoons in Europe. So that's usually
like
how I
right
schedule
now.
my calls. Yeah, like right now. So yeah, that's what happens. But I don't think that there's like a secret formula to how to do these things. But what I can say is that for anyone, having kind of a set schedule is a good thing, because even if you sometimes don't feel so productive, if you know that you just start at 10, especially if you're like independently working on stuff. I mean, no one is telling me when to work. I could like not come in until like 12 if I wanted to, but no, even if I'm up until 3 a.m, I try to be there again at 10 a.m. If I really feel like, no, I need some more sleep, I will sleep. But like otherwise, I'll be there at 10 a.m. So yeah, that's kind of how it goes.
This whole thing is like really exceptional, unique insight into
I mean, but again, I don't even see it as work. For me, it's fun. Like having
but
this.
that's the amazing thing. That you have this mindset, even though undoubtedly you work a lot, but you don't see it as work. I think.
I think the last thing I want to say here, and that's maybe it's easy now, like looking at song sets, for example, it's easy now to look at it and be really proud of it and saying, yeah, it's blowing up and stuff like this. But what is worth noting here is that we put 4 years of work into it, that for 3 of those years, we've been sinking more and more money into it. We've gotten more and more nervous about this thing not working out. We all saw that there's the idea, and we all saw that there's all this potential, but it's not been working out in a way. And then at some point we knew why, because we had to like let go of just electronic music. We need to make these big changes, but still, and maybe that's not something everyone can relate to, but after having had maybe, but like after I had the success with my first business, which was this like YouTube business, right? You suddenly have this like, I don't even know where this pressure is coming from, but you suddenly, I've quite felt pressure in a way where it's like, you need to do it again. And that's such a difficult thing though, because statistically, maybe 1 out of 100 startups works out, right?
Yeah.
So for you to do it 2 times in a row is like 1 in 1,000. That's like crazy. That's or even less. I don't know. I mean, so probably 1 in 10,000 actually. Whatever.
I think we won't question you with it.
Whatever. But I mean, okay. The good thing is I used obviously some of the money that I made from the first company to invest it into the new company. And that helped us not seeking outside investment, staying true to ourselves. Even though I need to say, like last year, towards this time of last year, we were actively like thinking like we should either look for outside investment or like rethink all of this, because at some point you're like, well, we can't just like keep going, losing money, not knowing the right path, right?
Exactly.
And ultimately we pushed through and we pulled it through with the right mindset and everything. And I'm really thankful for that. Because now we're again our own boss. There's no outside investor that has any say in what we're doing. Not saying that that's the right way of doing it, but I know that a lot of startups, especially more in the States, I'm guessing, like you are always seeking for the big investor or something like this, and then you're always seeking for this like big sale or something. But Jan's, for example, mindset with 1,000 Trackers, and also mine with Songsize now is, the best thing you can have is a good passive income stream where you're your own boss. And that's essentially what we've been doing with 1,000 Trackers and also now with Songsets, where we're building it up, but we don't necessarily need to sell or like build it to do anything like this. We build it because it's fun to do it. And now, and it got a bit risky at some point, because if you don't make money back after all this time, it really sucks. And then you feel all that pressure. But eventually we prevailed, so that's really happy. And I acknowledge that that's has a lot to do with luck, a lot to do with timing. So for us, for any startup, I think what is often being forgotten is how important timing is. Because you can have an amazing product. If it's not timed correctly, if the market is not ready for it yet, or if you're too late, it's not going to work. If you don't meet the right people at the right time, it's not going to work. So in the end of the day, yeah, we built this this data platform that no one was so interested in, and it was maybe not the right time for it yet, and also not our product wasn't ready yet. But then right around when actually Corona hit, we released a product which could have been terrible timing or the perfect timing, and it ended up being the perfect timing for us because suddenly releasing music is more important again. Suddenly all these artists are not touring, they're at home on their phones, on their computers, having time to check out their analytics and having time to play around with an app. So it kind of helped us in our favor. So the timing was great. So not that I wish that we had this crisis, but it worked out in our favor a little bit, I would think. As any tech company, I think it was fine for the tech companies. It's more like the other companies that are impacted more by
for sure.
Yeah. So
that is completely true, and it's still throughout this whole conversation that we've been having, it still baffles me as a business student who's been studying 4 years of business now, how comfortable and how also your language, how much you would think that you're a business guy like background wise. You know what I mean? And it's not to say that wow, you're so great, but it's to say that to look at you, everybody look at him, you can it's possible, it's I think it's a great inspiration. And I'd hate to end the podcast, and I love we could just I would love to just speak throughout your whole night, but you have things to do, and I don't want to have a 4-hour podcast. But I would definitely love to have maybe a part 2 of this where we can deep dive into other topics more. But but I think for now it's been really an exceptional pleasure having you on this podcast today and getting to know you. And I hope everybody who's watching this could draw, most definitely, I think, could draw some value out of this. And this is what this podcast idea that we had at Kibo was all about. And I say this at the end of every podcast until now, that it's been really what the valuable, and that's what this podcast is about. But it's all the guests that have been coming. I hate to call them guests, but all the amazing people that have been coming that I had the chance to interview with until now is really what the whole idea of this. It feels so fulfilled, and yeah, it's really great. Thank you so much for taking a lot of time now, more than we had planned, to just sit down and talk and give all those people out there a chance to have this unique insight into what your life has been until now. And
thanks so much. Yeah, thanks so much for having me, and thanks so much for letting me share my story. I haven't done that.
Yeah, no,
but that would be interesting as well for me.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just super great. Before we wrap things up, I want to give you one more time the opportunity to talk to the people out there one last time, to anything that you have on your mind that you want to get off your chest. Any last pieces of advices for the people out there who feel inspired, who want to follow the great things that you have accomplished. Anything you want to tell the people, now is the time to say it.
Yeah, we have a running joke here that we don't, none of us in our company likes life coaches, because it's always you give some spiritual, advice that's not really that grounded or not really based on own experience. I would say, dude, everyone out there, follow what you enjoy doing. That's what I did all my life. And I think whatever it is, whatever your passion is, just do it. Just do it. I think that's don't let anyone tell you that it's wrong or that something. I think that's for me, when I was in school and I would make these DJ mixes in my basement, my friends at school would laugh at me. I started recording Minecraft Let's Plays with my best friend that were horrendous. And now we're doing an official event inside Minecraft, a few years later. You never know what things will happen. Do other people favors, share your knowledge, share your interests, and have fun, and surround yourself with good people. That's another thing. I think creative minds think alike, and you are basically the sum of all these people that you're around with all the time. So if you put yourself around toxic people that they think you have a bad influence on you or something like this, then change the setting. Maybe travel a little bit or get inspired by something. You know, I think it's not so hard. And it's just a little bit of courage and sometimes a little push. Get out of your comfort zone sometimes, because that's when you really like start experiencing new things. But otherwise, I don't know. I'm really not the best at this. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
That's
all
all
right. Hey, there you have it. And no, Oskar, I hope you have a wonderful, well, not day, but evening now.
Thank you.
To all of you out there, thank you guys again for tuning in. As always, we'll see each other in the next episode. And Oskar, you and me, I don't know, hopefully we'll see each other down the line in life somewhere again. Maybe when I take a vacation trip down to Bali, I'll come and visit you in your your 3-mansion compound. That'd be great. But until then, take care everyone, and I see you in the next one.